Hey, everybody. Welcome to SF Indie Fest. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here. We got a chance to see a lot of cool films come through submissions, and this was kind of a neat one to kind of run across. You've just seen our closing night film, Tokyo Cowboy, and welcoming us to have some of the filmmaking team here. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Can you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Mark Marriott. I'm the director of Tokyo Cowboy.
Hi, I'm Brigham Taylor, a producer.
Very cool. Well, as I mentioned, this was kind of a neat film to kind of run across, and glad to be able to kind of share it at SF Indie Fest. I was wondering, what was the kind of genesis for the idea behind the story that we see?
Yeah, so 30 years ago, I had lived in Japan, and then I also around that same time I did an apprenticeship with a very well-known Japanese filmmaker named Yoji Yamada. He did the longest running film series in the world called the Torasan film series, and I worked on the 41st film in the series. This guy is 90 years old now, and he just released his 90th film.
Oh, wow.
But around that same time, that I was doing that apprenticeship, I read an article in Outside Magazine about a ranch in Montana that was owned by a Japanese company, and they would send workers over to learn ranching on the American side and kind of become cowboys. And I just thought that was a really interesting juxtaposition of cultures and a great launching point for a story. And I just thought there's a movie in there. And fast forward many years later, Brigham and I wanted to collaborate on something, and we just got excited about developing a story about a guy from the big city in Tokyo coming to this Montana landscape, and what would happen, what possibly could this story be. And I had the great pleasure and opportunity to work with Brigham on developing the story.
And as you were kind of digging in, I mean, what were kind of some of the things that you considered important in regards to the kind of like aesthetic approach you wanted to take it, and also just in the sense of this kind of cross-culturalism sort of thing, like how did you have to do kind of a bit of research again about Japan and how it's changed over time since when you originally came up with the idea, or how did the story evolve over those decades?
Yeah, and Brigham, why don't you talk about some of the things that interested you, because this was a very different project than most of the things that you've worked on.
Yeah, no, it is. And to answer your question and your prompt, Mark, I think that first of all, yeah, the research had to be there, but the first decision in trying to tell a story that was going to be contemporary to today's Japan and Montana, we wanted to hire writers who had an authentic voice for these characters. And so between Dave Boyle and Ayako Fujitani, our two screenwriters, we have an American who's fluent in Japanese and a Japanese national who's fluent in English, sort of collaborating and giving us what we hoped and we believe was a very authentic voice and insight into just cultural norms and as well as just developing these very specific characters. So that was, I think, decision one and the most important one in terms of trying to tell something that felt real and grounded and honest in its own way. But and to just answer your other question, Mark, that this was when Mark first came to me with this concept and mentioned the article and the kind of launch point for the kind of story we wanted to tell. I was intrigued for a couple of reasons. I thought it was an interesting and fertile sort of premise, especially if you wanted to tell something that was more grounded dramatically, so that any humor that was in it would come out of character and out of real circumstance. And that was for me, because up until that point, my entire career had based inside a studio system. I've been working for a long time at Walt Disney Studios and had a great time developing stuff that was larger and sort of more commercially minded and had sort of its own set of rules. And this, but I had always been heavily influenced and was a huge fan of independent film since I started volunteering at the Sundance Film Festival in 1990. And so this just represented a really rare opportunity to jump into the kind of storytelling that had a very different set of parameters in mind. And our North Star was like, let's just be absolutely sort of true to who we think these characters are, and follow that lead. And so that's the story that we developed and that we handed off to our screenwriters, and they really, I think, delivered on the promise of that premise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there any like unexpected challenges in, making the film when you were out there, in Montana?
Yeah, absolutely. And we had we were able to shoot in Tokyo for about 5 days, and we shot in Montana for about 15 days. We found Montana to be just everything that we had hoped it would be. That we shot in the Paradise Valley of Montana near Livingston. That was our base of operations. Found amazing crew out there, headed and found by our line producer Jerry Rafter, who was also our first assistant director. Amazing people out there. Like every film has some unique challenges, and we had our share of unique challenges. The very first day of filming, it was just coming down. It was snowing in large chunks, and we were doing some interior work, and with the schedule had us shooting outside later. And I just couldn't imagine that all this snow would be gone and match anything else that we would shoot later. But it did. The sun came out. The snow immediately around us melted enough that we could kind of match things. And that was just one of the we were shooting a film that is heavily influenced by the natural world around. And so shooting in that natural world, there's certain challenges, but what an amazing place and palette to have for this film.
And what was the casting process like? How did you find your lead actor?
It was both a very charmed experience, but also had challenges that we never expected, because we immediately put together lists and solicited thoughts on the leads, but we also knew we needed to find some lead cast from Japan. And so Mark looked at a lot of names and a lot of clips and movies. And when he told me, I was very thrilled when he told me his first choice was Arata Ayura, because I felt the same way and felt like he just in his bearing, he embodied a lot of what this character needed. And we were, long story short, we were super excited when we actually submitted the material to him, and through our intermediary, Ayako could help translate a lot. He said he wanted to do it, but we learned right then that any Japanese actor who's working as an actor, their schedule tends to be booked almost a year in advance. And so we learned very quickly, if we wanted to use him, our schedule would not work for him. We would have to delay it. And that was not easy, because you have this momentum, but I think we made the best choice by saying, let's wait for him and accept his enthusiasm for this role. And we did. And the movie benefited from that, not just by having him in the film, but by giving us a little more time to prepare and being that much more ready for it. But that was just the beginning of learning a lot of sort of just cultural differences in the business between LA and Tokyo. But we figured that out. And then on the American side, Mark, you can talk about, just because we knew we had to find this.
Yeah. Well, and before, I just wanted to say one more thing about Arata. What a fortunate find he was. And he's done a lot of films in Japan. He's well known in Japan, but he had never done a film outside of Japan. So we have the benefit of being the very first foreign film that he's done. And his experience as a person really mirrored the experience of this character. And so we took advantage of that, and kind of him being immersed in this new world. Arata, he doesn't speak English really well, and so it took a lot of time and effort and practice on his behalf to be able to do that. And so he had never been in Montana. Like, all these experiences that he was having that were really parallel to the character, and it was really wonderful to be able to use that. And then the American casting, we had a really wonderful casting director, Emily Schweber, who did an amazing job. And we were able to find Robin Weigert, who plays Peg, and also Goya Robles. Huge find. I just love Goya's I love both of their performance. Yeah, Goya Robles just wowed us, and we were able to find this person that is one of the main relationships that's developed and really helps to solidify that theme of two cultures, the kind of this divide, and bridging that divide between people and cultures, and how Hideki, the character Hideki, is able to experience these different cultures, especially the Spanish culture, through Goya, through Javier, the character Javier.
Nice. And so as I leave you guys, I guess one question, that probably like filmmakers in the crowd might be kind of curious about is like making an independent film is already tough, and making an independent film that has kind of foreign aspects, I'm sure kind of adds to the challenge. Like when you go to the set each day, or like when you're going into the editing room, like what's the thing that kind of keeps you guys kind of moving along to when the times are tough?
Mm.
That's a good question. I'll let you think for a minute, Mark, and I'll say
Yeah.
that this was, for me, I've been involved with a lot of projects, but it was unique in the sense that there weren't a lot of times where we didn't sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel, where there's always challenges. Mark alluded to some of those were physical, and some of those were just sort of creative, but nothing that was insurmountable. And so this, I think it's really accurate, at least for me to say, that there was never a time, both in prep and during production and post-production, where we weren't, I think having more optimism than not about what we were getting done and what we were able to achieve with the movie, especially against our own expectations. That's all we can do is try to make the movie that we were discussing, a year and a half ago. And so I think it was a great experience in terms of that. We certainly had to work through things all the way through an editorial. The lot changed, and Yasu, in a way, our wonderful editor, was so instrumental at finding the movie inside the footage we shot. But that said, the script that we had written, that Dave and Ayako had written, is terribly close to the movie that you've seen today. And so that's rare, and I think that speaks to just a unified vision that everyone involved really signed on to. And so
Yeah.
it was great.
Absolutely. I went into this with a bit of fear and trepidation. This is my first feature. I've been doing creative work in television and short films and things for a long time, but this was my first feature film, and it was pretty terrifying. It can be, but as Brigham said, the film itself is very close to what I had in my head, and that is just amazing to me. And I think it's partly because if you have a great script, which we did from our two writers, and you cast it right, like you're 90% there, and it was my job to just facilitate that vision and make sure that the atmosphere on set was the right atmosphere, and just let people create and kind of get out of the way. And it was complete joy to work with this group, and everybody was so unified. Brigham, I turn around on the first day, and Brigham's got a broom, and he's like sweeping snow off of the porch. Just everybody pulled together, and it really was this kind of feeling of let's put on a show together and work all together in a unified manner. It was really kind of a cool experience.
Well, I think you guys can we can see that on screen, and it's just a really neat film. So congratulations on that. And I always try to remind our audiences that film festivals, we're kind of the kind of grassroots street team for indie filmmakers. So I encourage everybody that saw the film to go and post and kind of share about it on social media, or talk about it at the next backyard barbecue. But what are ways that folks can kind of continue to follow the path of the film and your guys' creative efforts?
Yeah, Mark, we have all of our sites set up. You should mention those.
Yeah, so we have we're on all the social media channels, Tokyo Cowboy movie and Tokyo Cowboy film are the keywords and hashtags. We do have a limited theatrical release coming up in June, but only in Japan, and so we hope to figure out the puzzle of American distribution and other territories as we go through our festival run. Certainly, building an audience and building that momentum and critical response has been really key. So we're just hopeful, like, you know, we've found that there is an audience for this film, and we're hopeful that we can bring it to an even larger audience.
Nice. Well, everybody go talk about the film, and all the best with your efforts, and we'll look forward to seeing the next film you guys create too.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.